At least then I don't have to force myself to like something just because I told myself, well, it's healthy for me and it's cheaper and it's this and it's that. It's like, if I don't like it, I don't like it. Done. Plain and simple. Because the mental energy required to make the decision. Hi everyone. I'm back at the park and I was thinking about another idea related to overthinking. And I have always been the type of person to overthink things. But what does that even mean to overthink something? Is it when you're asking silly questions that don't need to be answered? Or is it considering every possible type of analysis until you maybe think you have all the answers and then somebody ends up telling you, oh, it's not that deep? And while I don't miss certain fixations that I had in the past, I do at times miss some of the deep dives that I used to go on more often. But I feel like these essays have kind of encouraged me to value that sort of thinking space again instead of just thinking one way and then sticking with doing things that one way without question. And when I think about my habits of overthinking, or even other people I know, I kind of feel bad for the people that tend to judge someone for overthinking, because it makes me think that they don't find a desire to over analyze something. And you could or I don't want to say over analyze, you could analyze anything from film reviews to doing science experiments, or just having that passion to dig deeper into something, even if other people think it's pointless. It's worthwhile to have that drive to want to do it, even if other people think it's silly. Anyways, to talk about a long introduction, I might put a skip button here just so you can ignore the exposition. But I honestly, I feel like the exposition is kind of the whole point of these videos. But unfortunately, our attention spans have kind of dwindled, including my own, guilty of that. Um, I guess they've been swindled by corporations taking away our time. So I'll work with what I got. But returning to the topic at hand, I'd really like to talk today about the difficulty of making decisions. The easy response to not being able to pick something that is seemingly simple is to say, stop overthinking, just pick something. Don't let the marketing of the grocery store consume you, blah, 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 blah. But it's not just about the marketing, it's genuinely asking yourself, what is flavorful? What is my family like? Is it lower in saturated fat? Is it higher in nutrients? Is it affordable for one? Or even is it from a reputable company? Or are they a environmentally conscientious company? So it's one decision boiling in a pot of 100 ingredients, and it feels like you're going to get burned no matter what you decide to do. And you end up questioning yourself, saying, do I even trust myself to pick the right sauce? Or maybe deciding that you should just make your own. Or maybe you take the path of least resistance, or what feels like that, and saying, forget it, and then just leave empty handed. Yet that still is choosing something. And that's what's actually frustrating, because eventually we have to accept that that is our decision. Now, I know I'm using kind of a simple example, but that's exactly my point. It's, if I were to use a different example, so like choosing a career or buying your first house or building a business, none of those are easy things to do. Whereas it should be easy to pick a simple item at the store for a simple meal out. Yet the decision feels bigger than you. It feels like, at times I feel like it's like a large shadow lingering behind me, as if something bad's gonna happen if I make and a bad decision. I realized that sometimes I just wanted someone to tell me what to do, almost to like solve the decision paralysis for me. At that point, it's less about looking for advice and more about pawning it off on someone else so that I don't have to carry the uncertainty of making a decision myself, not having to carry that weight. And I know for myself, when I struggle to make a decision, sometimes I just want reassurance or validation in whatever it is I pick, or even validation in my inclination to avoid it. So for somebody to be like, yeah, you don't need to worry about that anyway, it's not a big deal. But really, that fear only compounds on itself. So the more that I make a mountain out of a molehill, the worse it's going to be the next time that I come to a similar situation, because I'm going to anticipate that same level of difficulty or even more, even if it is something so simple as picking out an item at the store. For a lot of people, I feel like we fear uncertainty because we've associated it with danger. We've turned it into a crisis situation when we've decided that uncertainty is inherently negative. It's almost no wonder that we pick decisions apart. We overanalyze it, almost like we're looking for an excuse to not do something at all, looking for something to be wrong with it. And it really wasn't until I admitted to myself that I just don't like making decisions. And that was when I kind of acknowledged part of the problem. And I find it kind of ironic because usually when my friends come to me about a choice that they feel indecisive about, usually I'm the ones trying to convince them to, go forward with it and to pick something. And I think a lot of times they already know what the right decision is, because half the time, if it's like picking out one dress between another, I'll say I like this one, and they're like, you know what, actually I like the other one better. And I'm like, okay, they just wanted some reassurance. They wanted some validation. That's all they wanted. To know that the one that the choice that they're leaning towards is the right one. So why are we so inexperienced at making decisions? I feel like I've mentioned in other videos how we are expected to go with the grain. We're meant to ride along the path that everyone else is, to not swim upstream. And I feel like the same idea applies here. We grow up following instructions, always checking whether or not we have the right answer, only to then become adults who have to make countless decisions all at once with not much practice at all. It's sink or swim approach, basically. So we aren't really taught how to practice decision making. We're taught to listen, but not to listen intently, just listen enough to fill in the blanks, essentially. And that really only encourages you to look for certain cues, almost. And so it doesn't surprise me that, like, buzzwords become so popular when it comes to, like, products, for example. It's like we see that and we're like, oh, that means it's good. That means I'm making the right choice. Like, say if something is organic or whole grains or something like that, it's like, okay, like, those are the keywords I should be looking for. So I feel like that kind of blends in well to what I was kind of getting at, is there's just too many options, too many products. There's so many hobbies to try out. There's so many majors to pick from, even when it comes to going to college. It just feels like it never ends. And it's not that that's inherently a bad thing, but it feels engulfing. If I were to compare it to like online shopping, for example. It almost feels like sticking your hand down a sink drain to try to recover like a ring or something, just to get your hand stuck. And it's like you're in the situation like, I came here for one thing and now I can't escape. And that's kind of how it feels like going into the store, or again, going online shopping. It's just like it's all surrounding you. All the ads are right in front of your face, all the deals, all the discounts, and it's like, oh, you have to buy it right now. It's going to be gone tomorrow. The day will go on. And sometimes it feels easier to avoid the decision altogether. Like worrying about doing something badly can outweigh the anxiety of just not doing it at all. It becomes so uncomfortable that we'll ignore it for as long as possible. Yet letting fate, or other people for that matter, decide that for you isn't going to eliminate that pressure. If anything, it just makes the decision less visible. And for us, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. We equate not seeing it with safety, almost like it's like we know it's eventually going to fester in our back pocket like mold, but it does feel better than not have to deal with it right in that moment. It also tends to feel safe to gobble up as much information as possible before we finally take that leap of faith. Because then at least we know that there's water at the bottom, right? So we research, we analyze, we look at every possible angle. But eventually, if no decision has been made, then that's avoidance too. We'll call this digging productive, but then have nothing to show for it. It's almost like you're opening up a bunch of doors, but then not actually walking through any of them, just leaving them wide open. And somehow we convince ourselves that that feels safer, to leave all these options on the table. A good example for myself is there's been a lot of times where I will tell myself that I want to start drawing or painting again, or just, doing something creative, whatever. So I'll end up compiling a bunch of tutorial videos. I will buy random materials that I probably already have in my cabinets, and then I never end up actually doing the thing. In a way, it expands the decision to a point that it becomes impossible to actually start it. Which seems silly because it's like, okay, you have the materials, you have information, like what's preventing you from doing it? And it's like, well, now I have so many videos in my queue that I convince myself I have to watch all of them before I can even start. Or I have to do it just this particular way, or I can't start. Or I have to have all of these materials before I can start. It's like, you literally get yellow, red, and blue, and maybe some white or black paint, whatever, whatever the thing is that you're deciding to do, and then just use a piece of cardboard. You don't need a canvas. Like, literally, like, I have practiced painting on a piece of cardboard, and then I was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore, and I got, like, through the craving to do it, instead of, like, okay, let me go buy another big case of paint again just to go through this process and realize, like, yeah, I just am not in the mood to do this, but I thought I wanted to. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I've done this with meal prepping. I've done the same thing with creating the most effective workout plan, and then I never follow through with it. Even when it comes to being more environmentally sustainable, if the options presented feel too far outside of my reach, like something like eliminating all plastic use. It's like, obviously that is a wonderful aspiration to have and to achieve, but eventually I feel like I'll just reach the point of saying nothing I do is good enough anyway, and then the perfectionism takes over. Suddenly that desire just completely disappears, like with the painting. example. And even things that are supposed to be relaxing have turned into an Olympic sport. Like, my watch list for movies and shows is well over 400 some titles. And every time I open it, I just become overwhelmed, I lose interest, and then I end up scrolling on like Pinterest or Instagram or something instead. My point in saying all of that is that decision making is a skill. It is not something that just comes naturally for certain people. Like, for me, seeking out a bunch of information is what feels natural to me. And I think back to how I approached research papers in school, and I don't think that is the only reason for why I do it now, but I think it kind of explains part of it. Because at the time, I thought that having 30 pages of research notes for a 5-page paper was necessary. It was like, I need this much information. Or if it was going to be a 10-page paper, then I needed to have like 50 pages of notes. I needed to have every possible source analyzed, pulled apart, like, you name it. Like, whatever, people call me an overachiever. I look back at it and I'm like, that was a little psychotic. I don't know how I got through that. I mean, I know I still do it kind of now. No, I definitely still do it now. Not to that same level, but like, I don't know how I did it as regularly as I did, is what I'm trying to get at. So, the point being to that is it's a lot easier to complicate something than it is to simplify it. And you don't need to be someone who always knows what to do. Rather, it makes more sense to work towards being someone who's more comfortable making a choice with incomplete information. Sounds absolutely terrifying to me. But again, it takes effort, it takes intentional effort, because think about it this way, and this is kind of similar to what I was saying about the painting thing, is even if we gather as much information as possible about a hobby, about some random topic, we're never going to know whether we actually enjoy it until we do it. So I didn't, realize like I only wanted to do a little bit of painting. I didn't realize that until I actually did it. And then I'm like, okay, I got my fix for right now. And then sometimes I'll get like a bigger desire to do it and I'll do a bigger project. But that doesn't always happen. So instead of obsessing over getting all of this information, it's like, just start with something. I tend to treat decisions overall as problems to solve instead of an experience to have. So having to remind myself that they can be something to enjoy rather than something to be fearful of. So instead of asking, how can I be certain I'm making the right choice, it might be better to ask, what am I doing to make this decision easier for myself? Or how am I making it more fun? Or how am I making it just less boring? Like, am I, like more specifically, like, am I giving myself fewer options? Am I setting a deadline? Am I defining my priorities? Am I researching, or am I postponing the discomfort of choosing something? Recently, I made a rule for myself. It wasn't a very complicated rule, so it was something I used like one time. I don't want to mistake this as like a life-changing productivity hack, but I had planned to go to the gym after work. Got home and I like told myself, I was like, okay, I already decided I don't feel like doing a full workout today. Fine, whatever. What am I going to do instead? because mentally at the time I felt ready for some kind of activity, but physically I just wanted to be at home catching up on chores. Like I just kind of make excuses in my head, and to be fair, like I will often use that as an excuse to just skip going to the gym. I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go home and do chores, and then I just don't do either. So knowing that, I kept the rule very straightforward. I had two options. It was to exercise or do something productive. Those are my only two options. And it sounds ridiculous saying it out loud, but it helped the decision dysfunction because whenever I couldn't think of something, I don't know what that was. I think it might have just been a lightning bug, but it looked like something else. Whenever I couldn't think of something productive to do, then I had to start doing push-ups. I had to start doing squats, stretches, whatever it was. Something, that didn't take a lot of like mental work. It was just like, okay, do a random workout. Because normally I would lose momentum during those little pauses between activities, and then I would end up just scrolling on my phone instead because the energy needed to figure out what it is I'm doing, like that is so much more difficult in times like that. So that got rid of the decision entirely. It was like I'd be doing 5 push-ups and then I'd suddenly think like, you know what? I could wipe down the bathroom sink right now. And it also gave me an excuse to stop doing push-ups because I hate doing push-ups. It's not even something that's usually in my workout routine, but it was a great incentive to make me think of things that were productive instead of thinking of, oh, I could do like all these different things. It was like, nope, I narrowed it to just something that was productive. And I know that makes it seem restrictive, but the restrictive part of it made it so much easier because I eliminated all other possibilities. So it turned it into a game, and that kind of made it more enjoyable to gamify it because then I had a choice in the matter. I went into it choosing to do these two options, and all that to say, it takes practice. It takes practice. And it takes knowing yourself a little bit better because I know how much I will make excuses. I know how bad I am with free time and unregulated free time, especially when it's like I've decided to do something ahead of time and then I get to that moment of when I should be doing it and it's like, I actually don't feel like doing that thing right now. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing alternatively instead of just laying around doing nothing? You have to prepare for that sometimes a little bit in advance when you are mentally in the state of mind to consider that. So the other thing too is just starting with smaller decisions. Noticing when you're trying to, again, pawn it off onto someone else. When you're outsourcing, making a decision to someone else is what I'm trying to say. Or when you're researching something that you already know enough about, notice that. And most importantly, notice when you're waiting to feel entirely certain before you're able to just move forward at all with a decision. So I'll go to the grocery store one last time. So you're standing in front of the pasta sauce aisle or whatever, looking at 20 different options, and you're looking at prices, you're looking at reviews, ingredients, authenticity. Sometimes I will be just standing in the aisle, looking up reviews for the item right in front of me because I'm like, especially if it's say a protein shake that I've never tried before, I'm like, well, does this thing taste like crap or does it actually taste like chocolate? I'm like, I want to know that before I buy the thing. And that I don't mind doing, but if I get into the nitty gritty of what's the protein levels and then what's this compared to this other, it's in that moment right then I'm like, I just want to know if I'm actually gonna like what it tastes like. Obviously I want it to be healthy for me too, but I can kind of worry about that maybe a little bit after figuring out, do I like it? Because if I don't like it, boom, returning it. Don't even care. Like, the decision's already made. Like, yeah, it's a little bit more effort to go in and turn it in or return it, but at least then I don't have to force myself to like something just because I told myself, well, it's healthy for me and it's cheaper and it's this and it's that. It's like, if I don't like it, I don't like it. Done. Plain and simple. Because the mental energy required to make the decision ends up outweighing the importance of the decision itself. So focus on, in that moment, what matters the most to you. Maybe the taste of it is not something that actually matters to you. Like, maybe you're not super sensitive to the taste of things. I am, so that becomes something that's very important. All of that to say, you don't need 20 options. You might only need like 2. And then ask yourself, which ones are good enough? Not which one is the absolute best in every possible category. So maybe let's look at a bigger decision. Maybe you're trying to decide whether or not you should move away from your hometown. And narrowing options can help here too. So maybe you go from having like 10 places that you're looking at down to 2. Or maybe you're not even at that point yet. So then another question that you can consider is this decision going to help me grow, or is it going to keep me where I am? So if this is something that facilitates growth, then the decision becomes a little bit simpler because it basically has already made itself, which then turns the question into, how do I get there? Not will I get there, okay? Because at the end of the day, if this is something you want and you're trying to maybe mentally convince yourself out of it because of all these, all these options of like, oh, well, do I go to New York City? Do I go to Houston? Do I go to Lafayette? Do I go to Pittsburgh? Whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is how are you going to get there in the first place? Not, am I going to do it? Because if you want it that badly, then you'll find a way to make it work. Whereas if a decision is something clearly hindering your growth, then in a way you've already made the decision there as well. To wrap this up, now that the sun is starting to set, I think that's why decision making feels so unsettling, because every choice that you end up making feels like you're closing the door on countless other possibilities. And I think what makes that so uncomfortable is knowing that eventually we have to take ownership of whatever door we do walk through. And like, feeling responsible for our decisions, gross. Okay? It does not feel great until you get that validation of like, I made the right choice. But up until that point, it doesn't usually feel that great. Because you're sat in that uncertainty, the unknowing as to whether or not it was good for you. But refusing to choose is still a choice. Waiting is a choice. Searching for answers is a choice. Time is going to pass regardless of what we do with it. And I tend to treat decisions like puzzles that have to be solved before I can do anything. But life does not often work that way. So we just have to gather the information that we have, accept that we're never going to know anything, accept that we're never going to know everything, and choose anyway. Thanks for watching.